Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode as well as free training on creativity over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hi, it's James Taylor here. Today's episode was first aired as part of International Authors Summit. This inspiring virtual summit reveals the secrets of making, marketing, and monetizing a best-selling book. If you would like to access the full video version as well as in-depth sessions with over 40 best-selling authors, then I've got a very special offer for you. Just go to internationalauthorssummit.com where you'll be able to register for a free pass for the summit. Yeah, that's right. Over 40 New York Times and Amazon best-selling authors, book editors, agents, and publishers sharing their insights, strategies, and tactics on how to write and market your first or next bestseller. So just go to internationalauthorssummit.com, but not before you listen to today's episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to welcome Mark Coker. Mark is the CEO of Smashwords, a free ebook publishing and distribution platform and the world's largest distributor of indie ebooks. Smashwords makes it fast, free, and easy for authors and publishers to distribute ebooks to the world's largest ebook retailers and library ebook platforms. The Wall Street Journal named Mark as one of the 8 stars of self-publishing, and it's my great pleasure to welcome him onto the summit today. So welcome, Mark.
Hi, James. Great to be here.
So share with everyone what's happening in your world just now, what you're working on at the moment.
Always too many things at once. Right now, as we speak, we're working on a redesign of the Smashwords homepage, so we'll be launching that in the next couple of weeks. Going to make the homepage more reader-friendly.
So this is, I was reading, you have a catalog of nearly 500,000 book titles now. I don't know what the latest number is last time I saw it, but take us right back to the very start. How did Smashwords begin? Tell us about those first books that you kind of put out through Smashwords platform.
Well, in some ways it was an accident. My wife and I wrote a novel together titled Boob Tube about 15 years ago now. My wife is a former reporter for a soap opera magazine here in the States. So we wrote a book about the dark underbelly of Hollywood soap operas and the dark underbelly of celebrity. And we shopped it to agents. We were represented by one of the top agencies in New York City. And for 2 years, they tried to sell the book and couldn't sell it. And it was that experience trying to get a traditional publishing deal that really opened my eyes to what I saw as some really structural, fundamental problems in the publishing industry. And with my background in Silicon Valley, I thought, this is a problem that could be solved with technology. There's an opportunity here to democratize publishing so that every writer in the world has the freedom to publish a book and have that book judged directly by readers, as opposed to having that book judged by gatekeepers. And so that's what we did. In 2008, we launched Smashwords, and our book, BoobTube, was the third book at Smashwords. We had a couple other books that beat us to the punch. And then, today the rest is history. The business grew very rapidly. In 2009, we began distributing our books to major retailers. We were the first to open up Barnes & Noble and, at the time, Sony to self-published ebooks. And then later, we struck deals with Apple and other retailers. And then in more recent years, over the last 5-6 years, we've worked really hard to open up major library platforms to self-published ebooks. So that's been really exciting. So
you've really been at that curve as it was going up in terms of the world of the ebooks. I'm interested to know, because you have this blend of coming from the writing side, being an author, and then also the Silicon Valley side, who were your mentors as you were building this business? Because you're in this interesting intersection of publishing and technology.
Well, that's a big question. I've got, over the last couple decades that I've been involved in the tech industry, I can name multiple mentors that were inspiring to me. Prior to falling into this business, I ran a high technology PR firm. So I was privileged to work with the CEOs and VPs of marketing of some of the most interesting, innovative Silicon Valley companies. And many of the technologies that we helped promote and pioneer during those years, believe it or not, were applicable to the ebook world. So I was very active on the PR side. I was the first PR person representing McAfee, the big antivirus software company. McAfee was one of the first, they were the first shareware company to go public. They gave their software away for free and let people pay on the honor system. They relied on electronic software distribution to distribute their product to customers rather than putting their product in boxes. And so a lot of those principles from those early McAfee years in the late 90s were directly applicable to some of the principles that were at the time very revolutionary that I brought to ebook self-publishing, because ebooks are software, just like software is software. They're just digital bits and bytes. Too many VPs of marketing and CEOs to name as mentors. When I got started with the business, when I first launched Smashwords, a very close mentor of mine was Dan Pointer. Dan, I consider the father of self-publishing. He's the author of Dan Pointer's self-publishing manual that's been published continuously now for almost 30 years, over 30 years. Unfortunately, Dan passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a real early supporter of us, a mentor of mine. He pulled me aside and was just very supportive, opening doors for us, introducing us to conference managers, giving us advice. So he was really a dear friend and mentor.
Now, for people that don't know about the Smashwords platform, they haven't used it before, describe basically how does it work and what are the tools that are in there that can help authors and publishers to kind of get their books out into the world and to market and sell their books?
Sure. So as you mentioned in the intro, we make it fast, free, and easy for any writer anywhere in the world to publish an ebook. So you have two options when you come to Smashwords to publish your book. The first is that you can upload your manuscript as a Microsoft Word document, and then we'll take that document and our technology will automatically convert it into multiple ebook formats. So it'll be available for reading on any e-reading device. And then your second option is to come to us with a professionally designed and formatted EPUB file. So EPUB is the open industry standard for ebooks that every major retailer except for Amazon uses.
So that you mentioned the dreaded Amazon word. I know you've been very vocal in terms of their approach, especially with indies, authors and indie publishers as well. We should probably explain. There's a number of things that are kind of coming up in Amazon that have started, things like KDP Select that we've heard of. So is the world of indies strong? And do you think things are looking good for the indies when you have obviously very strong, dominant powers in the publishing world like Amazon?
It's a complicated story right now. I believe that there's never been a better time to be an author. There's never been a better time to be a self-published author. If you compare your opportunities today as a writer to your opportunities 10 years ago, it's night and day difference. Today, you can start writing a book, and with 100% assurance, you can know that your book is going to see the light of day and is going to be published and read by customers, whether you self-publish or traditionally publish. 10 years ago, there was really only one option, and that was to traditionally publish. That meant that over 90% of authors' books would never see the light of day. So Amazon launched in late 2007, just a couple months before Smashwords launched. Amazon deserves mad kudos for the innovation that they brought to self-publishing, the support that they've shown self-published authors, their ability to grow the ebook market as the world's largest online seller of books. So huge kudos to Amazon for that. But there's a dark side to what's been happening. Amazon's business model is entirely dependent upon commoditizing everything that it sells. And it's dependent upon controlling the price to the consumer. And the only way to control the price to the consumer is to control what you pay to the provider of the product. to the supplier. And in this case, the supplier is the author. So Amazon's putting a lot of pressure on authors to lower their prices and to basically drop their drawers and sell their books for lower costs. That works out great for customers, but it doesn't work out always so great for authors, because authors, unlike manufacturers of mousetraps, can't outsource their production to China or to India. You are the producer of your product. And so whenever I see anyone trying to take pricing control away from the author, I push back against that, because I think you, as the author, as the producer of this intellectual property, you have a right to determine how, where, and when your book is sold, and you have a right to set a price for your product. And what we've seen with Amazon and with, especially with KDP Select, you mentioned KDP Select, and for listeners who aren't familiar with it, Amazon has two ebook self-publishing options. The first is the regular KDP, and I recommend that every author is on KDP because it's the world's largest marketplace for ebooks. But the second option, this is an optional option, is called KDP Select, which you mentioned. And with KDP Select, Amazon requires you to make your book exclusive to them for at least 3 months. That means you can't sell your book on any other website. You can't even put it on your own personal website. And KDP Select, as I warned back in 2011 when it first launched, is toxic to the future of publishing, and it's toxic to the future of author independence. So now we have a situation where over 1 million ebooks are exclusive to Amazon. These books cannot be purchased at any other retailer. So readers, millions of readers now have over 1 million reasons not to shop at any other retailer. And so what we're seeing is that the customer base of other competing retailers like Apple, Barnes & Noble, Kobo are slowly being pulled away and shifting into the Amazon ecosystem. That means that Amazon's competitors are getting weaker. They're more challenged at achieving profitability, which means their very future is in jeopardy. Now, Apple's never going to go out of business because they have more money than God. But Barnes & Noble, Kobo, two other great ebook retailers that support the indie author community, both of those retailers are in jeopardy if the current trends continue. And I don't see anything reversing those trends because most writers are born desperate to reach readers. And Amazon provides access to the world's largest collection of readers. And that would be a great thing if not for the fact that Amazon's business model is dependent upon commoditizing your work, making your work undifferentiated and undifferentiable from another author's work. Now, I know a lot of authors think that, my book is my unique creative product. It can't be commoditized because there's no other book like my book. But the fact of the matter is that reading pleasure is commoditizable. Can be commoditized, because if you look at it in terms of how many hours of reading pleasure can you get per dollar or per euro or per pound, you're going to get a lot more reading pleasure per unit of currency at Amazon with KDP Select than you're going to get at any other retailer, because the other retailers don't have a subscription option. The other retailers pay based on the list price of your book, whereas in KDP Select and Kindle Unlimited, which is their subscription service, which is powered by KDP Select, authors are paid out of a pool. They're paid about 1/2 penny per page that's read.
There's lots of echoes here for myself that has come from the music industry originally. There's lots of echoes here of obviously of things like Spotify, which is worked well for some creatives, but probably not great for most creatives. And I noticed when I saw the Kindle Unlimited thing, I didn't personally go with that. I'm not a subscriber to Kindle because I had these horrible feelings of we're going to go down the Spotify route here, and it is as you say, it's becoming very commoditized in that way.
It's a slippery slope. Now, there are other subscription models that I'm quite supportive of. For example, Scribd. Scribd is probably the second largest provider of subscription ebook services. Scribd pays authors and publishers based off of the list price. So after a certain percentage of the book is read, it triggers a credit to the author or publisher as a full sale. And I think that's a much more author-publisher friendly model, because if Scribd gives away too many hours of reading pleasure per dollar, then they go out of business because the authors and publishers aren't paid well enough. So they're challenged to find that common intersection between what works for the author-publisher, what works for the reader, and what works for the subscription service provider. And I think Scribd has found that balance.
Now, one of the things, like I know that the KDP Select you also mentioned, is that you can't put it up on your own website. Let's say, during that period of however many months there. I'm guessing for a lot of our audience here who are non-fiction and business, they're writing business books or non-fiction books of some sort. That can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, because one way you're also looking to try and build up pre-orders as well. So I know you've done a lot of research into the world of pre-orders and how pre-orders can lead to ongoing success. What have you found when you've been doing that research into the world of pre-orders?
Sure. So an ebook pre-order is an advanced listing of your book at the major retailers up to 12 months before the book is ready for purchase and reading. So pre-orders are one of the most powerful, one of the most effective marketing tools, and they're also one of the most underutilized tools in the indie community. We've been tracking pre-order adoption rates for a few years now. In 2018, this is based on the new Smashwords survey 2018 data, which I haven't released yet on the blog, but I'll release probably in the next couple months. We found that about 17% of new books published by indie authors and publishers originated as an ebook pre-order. Yet that small percentage of books that originated as pre-orders accounted for the vast majority of sales. We also dug deeper into the pre-order adoption rates across different genres and categories. For example, we found that in romance, which is one of the top indie categories, 29% of the books originated as a pre-order, yet that 29% of books accounted for fully 75% of all book sales for that year for new books released in that category. On the nonfiction side, for example, if we look at nonfiction biographies, only 15% of new indie titles in that category originated as pre-orders, yet that 15% of books accounted for 79% of the sales in that category for the year. So what we're seeing is that ebook pre-orders, books that are released as pre-orders, are vacuuming up all the sales. And what it means, if you step back for indie authors, is that if you don't release your book as an ebook pre-order, you're leaving readers and money on the table.
That's fascinating to have that kind of that data, that supported data, to be able to show that. I'm guessing everyone now is in the back of their heads thinking, okay, I need to get my pre-order strategy as part of my marketing plan much bigger as well. I also heard something.
Yeah, but basically what I would say on that count is look at your publishing calendar for the next 12 months. Any book that you plan to release in the next 12 months, get it up on pre-order now. You don't need a book cover yet. You don't even need the manuscript yet. At Smashwords, we have a feature called assetless pre-orders. These are metadata-only pre-orders. So you can establish the pre-order with as little as just the title of the book, a book description, category, and a price and a release date.
And why is it that those pre-orders, you mentioned that such a small number is driving so much of the sales? What is going on there? Is it the algorithm or what's happening?
There's a number of factors that are driving it. I think the most important factor is that pre-orders enable more effective advanced book marketing. So most authors are on their blogs, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever they communicate with their readers, talking about what works in progress they've got going, what's coming out in the future. And the authors might not even consider what they're doing marketing, but that's marketing. And if you have a pre-order link, a pre-order hyperlink that you can share with your followers, then you're able to capture that reader's interest. You're able to capture that reader's order at the moment you have their greatest interest and attention.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest reason. Another big factor is that the merchandising at the major retailers is very future focused. What's coming out, what's new. And this is especially true at Apple iBooks, which is the world's second largest global seller of books. Apple does the very best job of promoting pre-orders. And they have a special algorithm at Apple that you won't find at the other retailers. At Apple, all of those pre-orders that you accumulate during the pre-order period credit toward your first day's sales rank when your book finally goes on sale. So we've had a number of authors on the day of their release hit #1 at the Apple Store worldwide. We've had authors go live with thousands of accumulated pre-orders. And when you get that kind of boost to your sales rank, it makes your book more visible and more desirable to other readers, because readers use bestseller lists to identify their next read. Readers see bestseller lists as the amalgamation of the wisdom of the masses, because they're related to what other readers are buying.
Is this a bit of an advantage then that indie authors have over traditional published authors then, because they have more control over their timelines, let's say?
Yes and no. I think the first thing to understand is that the pre-order adoption rate among indie authors is abysmally low. I mean, it's just horrible that more than 80% of indie authors aren't releasing their books as pre-orders. Yet if you look at traditional publishers, pre-orders have been a recognized best practice for years. So almost every major traditional publisher is releasing their books as ebook pre-orders. Yeah. So this is an example where the indie authors are a little bit behind the curve. But indie authors with pre-orders do have some advantages that the traditional publishers don't have. Many of the bestsellers that we see at Smashwords are series, and one of the tricks that indie authors use is to price their first book in the series at free, and then use that to hook the reader, get the reader invested in the series, and then the reader goes on to purchase all the other books. So if you can combine a free series starter on a series with a series that has a pre-order out at the very end, either as book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, or whatever, then you can drive a lot more readers into your series.
I have been one of those buyers. I have got hooked on that first one, the free, and it's totally brought me in. And I then bought the second and third in the book. So I think and this is kind of goes back to this idea of, I guess, being quite strategic in your planning and your thinking as an indie author. And I know we had Joanna Penn was interviewed as part of this summit, and Joanna said we need to move from thinking of ourselves as self-published authors to independently published authors, and have a bit of that. Just because you're an indie doesn't mean you can't have really well thought out plans and really well executed plans as well. So that's great. So I love that you're providing all this data available to people so they can start to use. And you have a great podcast. One of the episodes you did for that was the 16 secrets of best-selling authors. And there was a whole bunch of, and I like number 1 first, which is basically write a good book, which is obviously the main one. But actually one of the other ones was that build a platform that you control. And I think that's incredibly important.
Yes. A lot of authors have learned this lesson the hard way. So just look at Facebook, for example. Authors spent thousands of dollars, millions of dollars collectively building up their platforms at Facebook, only to have Facebook pull the rug out from underneath their feet and start charging authors for access to people who are following them. So a lot of authors saw that as a bait and switch. And so the people who are following you on Facebook or who are following you on Twitter or Instagram, you don't actually control access to those people. Those people who want to see every single one of your tweets and posts, they're not going to see your tweets and posts unless you pay money to access them. So I'm a big believer in authors building a platform they control. That means building your own private mailing list, doing everything you can to drive readers into your private mailing list, because you control that, and then you can control your communications with your readers.
Very important. Great advice there. What about if when you're working with authors, is there any tools that you would recommend, any online tools or apps you find particularly useful for writers, especially non-fiction writers?
I don't have any recommendations for apps or tools on the writing side. Most of the books that we see written are written in a word processor or Microsoft Word. I would say use what works best for you. There are a lot of different writing tools, and they're fine too if they work for you, but it really depends on your writing style. Are you a plotter or are you a pantser? And if you are a meticulous plotter, then I think a lot of these software programs have a lot more value to you.
And then what about if you were to recommend one book? Actually, we spoke, those 16 Secrets of Best-Selling Authors, and the first one was really about the craft, of really writing a good book. If there was one book you were to recommend specifically on the craft of writing and being a good author, being a great author, hopefully, what would that book be?
I'm a big fan of Stephen King's book on writing. I think that's a great introductory book for anyone who's just getting started considering writing a book.
Fantastic. A wonderful book. And I'd like you to kind of put your mind back. I'm going to put a slightly unusual question to you. I want you to imagine that tomorrow morning you have to start from scratch. I'm going to have you put your author hat on at this stage. So you have, no one knows you, you know no one. But you do have the skills that you've acquired as an author over the years, so you're going to have to completely restart your career as an author. What would you do? How would you restart things?
Tapping into my experience in publishing, I would know that good books aren't good enough anymore. And so I would focus relentlessly. After that first draft is written, multiple revisions, more revisions, beta readers, professional editing. There's just no substitute for that. If you're an indie author and you're preparing to release your first book and you've got a couple $1,000s burning a hole in your pocket and you're wondering if you should spend that on editing or marketing, spend it on editing, because your book, the quality of your book, is the best marketing that you'll ever receive, because books sell based on the wings of reader word of mouth. Yep. It's all about word of mouth. So I would start with a super fabulous book. I would orient my publishing strategy primarily around ebooks, with one exception. If I'm writing nonfiction and I'm a professional speaker and I have the ability to sell books in the back of the room, then I definitely want to have print books as part of my marketing mix, because I want to sell print books in the back of the room. The next thing on the ebook side, if I'm just getting started and my author platform hasn't been established, I'm going to price my first books at free. I'll probably look to write series. So I'm going to price the first book in the series at free, and I'm going to get the second book up on pre-order. And if there's a third book coming in the next 12 months, I'm going to get that up on pre-order as well. So you use the free book to drive as many readers as possible into the series, and then you start building your platform with books 1, 2, and 3 as you drive people into the series. Another really important tip, and you probably heard this on the Smart Author podcast on that 16 bestseller secrets episode. A lot of authors make the mistake of ending their book with a period and then nothing after that. When the reader finishes your book, put yourself in the reader's shoes. They just discovered their new favorite author. They just discovered you. They've never read you before. They loved your book. They want to read more from you. They want to know more about you. They want to connect with you. So add these 3 sections to the back matter of your book. Add a section titled Connect with the Author. Put all your social media coordinates there with live hyperlinks so they can, with a click, directly start following you, directly start subscribing to your private mailing list. The second section, about the author. So a short bio to humanize the author. It doesn't need to be a long CV, just something short. Tell the reader something about the author. And then the third section, and these sections can appear in any order in the back matter, would be other books by this author. So that's a great opportunity to make it really easy for readers to start reading and discovering your other books. If you write series and the reader just finished book 1, let them know what book 2 in the series is. Give them a free sample right directly within the book so you can get them hooked and directly involved into the new series. The next big tip, next to the quality of your book, nothing's more important than the cover. Readers do judge books by the cover. Now, images are a form of communication, but they're a much denser form of communication. You can communicate much more information with images than you can communicate with words. So again, put yourself in your target reader's shoes. Understand who your target reader is. Who is that target reader who will enjoy your book more than any other reader in the world? That's your target reader. So if you're writing nonfiction about real estate, you're not targeting all real estate investors. You might be targeting a certain subset of real estate investors. So target that subset and then develop a cover that promises through imagery that your book will satisfy the reader's aspirations. Now that you understand who that reader is and what they aspire to what they aspire for in their next reading experience. So those are a few tips to get you started.
Fantastic. A great list of tips there. So Mark, thank you so much for sharing those. And we're going to have a link here to the Smart Author podcast because it's a great series of podcasts. I think I just started on, there was one you were doing all about pre-orders. You've got a whole one just about talking about pre-orders as well. So we'll have that link to the Smart Author podcast. We're also going to have a link here to Smashwords itself so people can go in there, get your account set up, start working on that as well. And if people want to reach out directly to you, Mark, or to follow you and learn more about the other things that you're involved in, where's the best place for them to go and do that?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Mark Coker, MarkCoker. You can follow me on Facebook, also Mark Coker, or you can send me an email. My email is mc@smashwords.com.
Fantastic.
So I look forward to hearing from people.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time today and sharing some absolute brilliant bits of knowledge and insights, all backed up by data and surveys that I know that you've been doing as well. And I wish you all the best when as Smashwords goes from strength to strength. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you, James. My pleasure.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.